Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Quantum Leap. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I thought this was actually a very beautiful and very powerful and emotional episode. Obviously, in this episode, Ben is in a boxer named Danny, and he's basically getting ready for a championship fight against, the champ. But there's some complications. His girlfriend, Angela, is, I guess, the current champ's girlfriend, or maybe, she's someone that, I would assume, that's his girl, but it's maybe she got with Danny because Danny was a nice guy, and the champ is just, he's kind of from the little we got, kind of a possessive douchebag, so maybe that's kind of plays a role in it. It's hey, maybe she was just so she's just kind of slow rolling it, because it's right, if I don't, when it's all said and done, I want to be with you, but I'm kind of stuck in between right now. I want to leave him, but yeah. I mean, the fact is, he's yeah, I know about you and Angela, because he had her followed, so it's once again, it kind of speaks volumes about him, but regardless. So, when it's all said and done, this episode really leans into this beautiful relationship between Daryl and Danny. And I think it's this very powerful thing that, I mean, maybe this speaks volumes about Ben, or maybe there is a part of him when he gets inside of these people, he ends up tapping into them a lot more than he thinks. Because obviously it's whatever physicality they have, because that's the thing, right, you're in Danny's body, Danny's in great shape, he's strong and he's fast. The physical conditions of his body, you have that, you just don't have the mental, skill and experience that he does, when it comes to the boxing. But the fact is that when Ben and Daryl have their heart-to-heart moments, and Ben really digs deep and starts even tearing up himself, that the fact is he can have that conversation. It could just be that naturally Ben is very empathic in that regard, or maybe it's just, because he even said it when he was talking to Addison. He was yeah, he always wanted a brother, and in this moment he kind of has that, where it's this is someone that's, you know what sadly Daryl's future is, because he went to Vietnam and he came back, and he never actually fought after, because he was a boxer before he went to Vietnam, but the moment he came back, he didn't. And understandable, you want to put that side of yourself away, because he's already seen so much death. Even sadly, people throwing out oh, baby killer, and he's what'd you call me? They're oh, what, that struck a nerve with you? I'm sure that was so readily thrown at people who came back from home. It's sad. I mean, and I think that trauma obviously that's an important part of this episode, is the trauma that so many veterans and soldiers have to carry. That it's a prominent conversation that, yes, nowadays we are more conscious and more aware about, and sadly not everyone still is able to get the help that they need. Both, anyone just in general, because mental health is very important, but also when you go into something extreme like that, when you see what you've seen, when you, especially someone who's been to Vietnam, but also anyone that's seen death, especially in Daryl's case, it's I've seen so many of my friends dead, every time I close my eyes. And then you add in that, you come back home and you're seen as scum of the earth because of what you did. You did what your country asked you to do. You didn't just do it happily. It's, because you don't hey, that's what my country asked of me. I didn't agree with it, but, you're part of the army. You do what you're told, So, and the sad thing is, when because this battle, this fight is about the gym. Because they were losing money already, and Daryl had to basically put the gym up as almost collateral. So when they lose, he won't be able to pay it off until they'll lose the gym. And in that process, it sent him over the edge, and eventually he ends up killing himself. Daryl ends up killing himself afterwards. So it's right, this might be why Ben is here. He's not here just to win some match, because it's oh, Danny loses his match, but is that what I'm really here to do? Win a fight? It's the fight, there's so much more at stake here. Daryl dies, and who knows what kind of effect that's going to have on Danny in the long run. We didn't really find that out, but the devastation that Daryl's suicide would trickle out, and who knows what it does to Penny, what it does to Danny. I mean, who knows, that might riddle Danny with guilt that he couldn't do anything for his brother. But I thought was so, obviously Addison is the one training Ben to kind of get up that experience. It's like, cool, you actually have a cheat sheet. She's like, oh man, if only you knew exactly what was going down. He's like, all right, how long are you going to milk this? She's like, hey, I got to take the wins to where I can get them. And so I thought that was so interesting. It's like, right, you do have a future cheat sheet of like, okay, this is how the fight's going to go down. What you need to do is you need to like play the fight out exactly. You got to memorize everything, because she's like, well, you have a photographic memory, which I agree with Ben. It's like, oh, that is ironic. Having a photographic memory when you remember nothing. But the fact is like, right, remember every step. You got to choreograph this fight, because every step of the way, you got to get it to round 2. He has an opening, and Danny, in the original timeline, didn't see it. You can see it, and bam, lay the champ out, and you can win. That can change everything. But you got to last, got to make sure everything, got to make the same move, because everything has to be the exact same way it was in the original timeline, so you could get to that opening in the second round. And I love how they constructed that too, where you see, like, right, they've got like the simulation of it running in the background, and him and Addison are doing their thing, and every time Addison and him is moving, like Danny and the champ in the ring are doing the same thing. Or it might have just been Ben. I don't know if it was actual Danny in the simulation, but I thought that was okay. Oh, run it again, and then like the simulation. I thought that was so beautifully like filmed and displayed. I was like, oh, that's actually pretty dope. But the sad thing is that part of the episode is kind of a symptom of a larger issue for Addison. She kept pushing and pushing, because for her, it's like, we need to push harder, because the fact of the matter is, if we get this wrong, you fail, and cause we don't know what's going to happen to Ben if he fails. Like, he won't leave this time. Like, he'll probably just be stuck in this person's body forever. Just maybe he will leave, but just be lost to the like space and time. Who knows? Because I don't know if that ever came up in the original series, like if Sam ever failed any of the like what he was there to change and what to do. Because if you do, like, what happens to Ben? Will he just forever be, in this case, stuck in Danny's body? So in some of the other cases, I mean, at least with last episode, it was like the person in the original timeline died, so if they die, you die. But like, we don't know if it's like you fail to change things, like what happens in the grand scheme of things in this particular case. I mean, you know what it means. It means that eventually things are going to play out like they did in the original timeline, and Daryl's going to end up dying. So there's so much at stake here, but also for Addison, it's like, I need you back home, because she's not eating, she's not sleeping, because everything she does, work, home, like she can't escape like thinking about Dan. She's like, even the day of the week, which even ends like the day of the week, and it's like, yeah, Wednesday we order time, we watch like the Real House, like one of the Real Housewives. I don't remember which one it was, because there are multiple. I'm not a reality TV person. I'm aware of certain things, but still. And she's like, yeah, he pretends to hate it, but he follows all of them on Twitter. So I thought that was cute. And so she's pushing herself. She can't eat, she can't drink, she can't sleep, she can't think unless it's, so she needs to get him back so she can find some balance again, because it's all about focusing on Ben, to the point she was so exhausted she passed out during the training, and she had to immediately get back to it. But Magic's like, if you run yourself to the ground, this, we learned, is not a sprint. This is a marathon. We have to pace ourselves, because they found out in the grand scheme of things, Ian kind of discovers what Ben is doing. Mapping things out. Yes, there is a very particular point in time he's going, but basically he's kind of slingshotting himself, that he's taking a very specific path, so it will take him to the outside of the pathing and kind of slingshot him into, like, that way he can probably get to the point he's trying to get to at a much faster rate, because the alterations that Ben has made to the code has made it so, and this is something I brought up last episode, that I was like, oh, I was under the impression like maybe the Atlantis that he was on. I didn't realize, like, I was thinking like, oh, maybe this is like the moon landing or something like that, but I'm like, I should have figured it wasn't. So I just, whatever, in retrospect, I'm like, I was an idiot for thinking that, but I was thinking like maybe it was the 60s or something, and it ended up being the 90s. I'm like, okay. It's like, and then I remember, it's like, right, the time, like, the way the quantum leaping works is, it's once again, the example I used last time was the time traveler's wife. It has to be in your own timeline. You can go in, like, you can land anywhere in any point in time that exists in your time, that you've been around. So, like, say, like, Ben was born in 82, for example, anywhere between his birth in 82, say, like, it's March 1st, 82 to what is now October 4th, 2022. Like, anywhere in that time frame, just using that example, he could go any point in that time. But going outside of that, it seems like they did that specifically because it seems like a safety net, the way Ian described it. It's like a lot of the safety protocols were removed, so now Ben can go literally anywhere in the timeline. That's why he needs like the kind of almost be like, he needs to kind of use the momentum of going on the outside and kind of being flung back in, kind of slingshot back in, so that he could go, like, it kind of build up momentum and speed with his leaps to charge himself into like going wherever he needs to go. And so meaning now all of history is open season, you know? So I was like, that's really interesting, like especially like from the like science perspective, or just the science fictional perspective of like, okay, so, you know, and like I'd also brought it up like last episode too, when I referenced the time traveler's wife. The fact is that with the time traveler's wife, Henry was able to go beyond where he was born. He could even see when his parents first met, even though that's not within his time frame, but it's still like, you know, relatively part of his history. So it's like, it's kind of almost a similar approach to this, obviously going even further beyond that, making it so like a lot of history is at his disposal. So we'll have to wait and see, but I just thought that was so interesting. And that's why it's like, right, we're not, this ain't no, like, at least, you know, at least 10, at most 20. So somewhere in that range is going to be how many leaps it's going to take for Ben to come back. So that ends up being kind of like the sad nature of it. Like, at least you have a number, but it's still like, who knows how long that's going to take. And once again, they don't even have a specific number. They have like anywhere between 10 to 20. Like 20 seems like to be the maximum, but even then it's like, it might even been like, Ian might even said at least 20, so that might not even be the maximum. It might be, I don't remember if he said, if they said at least or at most. That phrasing matters a lot, you know, so whether it's just at most is going to be 20, at the very least it's going to be 20 means like it could be way, way, way more, so. And because of that, like I said, Addison was pushing herself. But, obviously, the cops end up getting involved because Daryl had hit one of the champs, two of the guys, because he was defending. Well, he kind of popped off on the guys because they were running their mouth. Like, obviously, he told Danny to kind of back down because he knew if Danny landed a hit, it would have kind of ruined things. But it's like, Daryl couldn't help himself, you know? And even when he was talking to Danny / Ben later, he was like, I don't mean to be like this. He's like, the fact is I'm yelling at people. Like, he's like, I can't kind of control myself. Like, once again, close my eyes, all I see are my dead, you know, comrades, you know? And especially because Penny doesn't know how desperate the situation is, his wife. And for her, it's just like, the man I love isn't there anymore. And obviously Ben doesn't want to tell her anything, but obviously like he's paranoid because he's like, oh, like Daryl's like, my wife's going around telling everyone's my business. It's my business. She's telling behind my back. And was able to keep him calm while the cops were arresting him. But like I said, that beautiful moment in the jail cell where he's like, nah, I'm not fighting. Like, we're not going anywhere until you promise you're going to get help. He's like, well, what can a doctor do for me? It's like, you know, I will never be the man that I was. And it's like, at the very least, he's like, you're asking me to like go into this. Like, you don't want me distracted? Well, how can I not be distracted when I don't have you by my side? Like, I want to get through this how we've always gotten through everything, and that's together. So not if I win, when I win, you need to get help. Promise me. And it's this beautiful, touching moment where they're both tearing up, and even Daryl being like, man, you got me in here crying. I was like, that was so beautiful. And then both to be reunited with their ladies on the outside of like, yeah, we got this. And so when the fight comes, it's like, right, do your thing. And Ben, he comes in for, it's like, no, next round, I got him. He's mine. Second round comes, boom, lays the champ out. It's like, yeah. I was like, it's not going to go that way, is it? And it's like, nah, the champ gets up, you're like, oh, cool, that didn't go right. Because we know Ziggy was a little off with the calculations and stuff because Ziggy's been off this episode. We'll get to that later, but because of that, it's like, well, damn, that sucks. So now Ben's got to like, you know, kind of go for it. But it's like, right, Ben is a righty, and I think Daryl's a lefty, so he had to kind of adjust to that. But now it's like, right, the champ is not going to see you coming, but granted, you're gonna have one shot at it. You need to switch up and fight like Ben and not like Danny in this moment. To switch to your actual dominant hand instead of Danny's, and you can like you didn't need just get in one good blow, and he does it and wins. I'm like, yeah! It's just one of those things. It's like it's a very like Rocky moment. You're just kind of like cheering on and just like and like I said, I mean maybe there's a little bit of that like a Rocky inspiration in this episode because of that, like Rocky like / Creed. I've seen bits and pieces of Rocky movies. I don't think I've ever seen a Rocky movie all the way through. I know just because of the natural pop culture of Rocky, I know stuff. Like, once again, just the whole, like, running up the stairs, especially because the internet being the internet, the meme of, the effed up meme where it's like, okay, that scene from Rocky, but then, like, a whole bunch of kids come running up and he starts punching the kids. There's that, obviously. But, I mean, obviously the joke of it, but just knowing, like, the thing of just, like, just running up the stairs, just being the thing, right? So I know that. Oh, and Adrian. That. But I've never seen any of the Creed movies. It's kind of also another point I was going to make. But when it was this a beautiful moment, and it's like, right, Daryl promising, like, right, he will get help. And Addison looking at the future says, like, right, he does get help. Eventually, he opens one of the first, like, facilities in the country for getting like soldiers help, like soldiers suffering with PTSD, like getting them help. And I was like, that's beautiful. The whole like, taking what you're going through and being there for people in that same position, paying it forward, I think is beautiful. So it all worked out in the end. But I did like that Ben didn't really, because he only got a glimpse of it when he got knocked down. He does remember, he was starting to remember Addison, but the memory wasn't really there. And before he could fully ask her about it, he leaped. But I also loved her to fight. The guy was like, all right, can you tell me your name? He's like, Ben Song. He's like, I got to call this fight. He's like, no, Danny Hill. I was like, I love that. That's so good. But yeah, I thought this was so beautiful and there was so much heart. And just because of that, I don't know, maybe because it also hits a little close to home because like, I have siblings, so maybe that's why it hit a little close on. Like, I don't have a brother, but I have 2 older sisters. We're not that close, but it's just like that familiar tie, especially because like, at least in Danny and his, Daryl's case, it's like, right, they lost their parents, years ago, and it's like, they are all they have in this world. They're the only family they have. So I just thought that was so beautifully done and executed. So I thought that was awesome. But, jumping ahead a little bit, Ben finding himself, it looked like it might have been in the 80s or something, and it's like, oh, he's in a club or something. I was like, okay. It's like, all right. I wasn't expecting, like, the twist to be whatever. Legitimately, I was wondering if, like, I was like, oh, I wonder, is it like a gay club or something? Is that where he's at? And I was like, oh, that's going to be interesting. And it's like, oh, they made it interesting by the fact is he's in a lady's body this time. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's going to be weird. So, which immediately I'm just calling it ahead of time. I'm like, oh, people in general are going to have an issue with that episode in particular. They're just going to be like, oh my God, whoa, blah, 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 blah. Oh, because it's coming at it from a feminist point of view, trying to make it seem like, oh man, like I can see it written in the stars. I'm like, I could definitely see that just being one of those things. It could be one of those episodes people are just like, oh, this woke be it. I'm like, okay. Oh, God, I'm getting exhausted just thinking about it. Hey, I could be 100% wrong, but it feels like with just the nature of that, I'm like, oh, God, they're going to, like, I could see that, like, people on the internet complaining about that already. Just like, oh, just like, if they take even a certain approach with the episode, you're just like, oh, God, it's going to be She-Hulk all over again. And we're just like, oh, please don't. And from that perspective, I mean, like, specifically how the internet has responded to She-Hulk is, like, it's annoying. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's like, oh, you can have your criticism, but just like a lot of takes the internet has had, it's just been so annoying when it came to She-Hulk, but I'm super biased because I like the show, but either way. Putting all that aside, I thought that was interesting because like I said, I legitimately was like, oh, maybe it's a gay club type of situation, but then it's like, oh, you're in a woman's body. It was like, oh, that's definitely going to be interesting. That's going to be quite the adjustment. I mean, because even before now, it's like, well, you've always been in dudes, so it's like, yeah, it's only going to be a matter of time, I guess, before you ended up in a lady's body. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But the other side of this episode Well, really quickly, Addison at home, watching The Real Housewives, and I love that the rest of the team came over, and Ian's like, "Oh God, you won't believe like how much I had to explain what The Real Housewives are to Magic Mike's like, I still don't understand what it's about." And it's like they brought the Thai food, and it's like, right, you wanted her to not have to be so alone. It's like, right, we're a team in all of this. Like we'll get through this together. But circling back to the Ziggy thing, they found out that Ziggy actually is being slowed down because Janice ended up uploading something, like the drive. She kind of planned for them to take the drive. I don't know whether like her and Ben knew that was going to happen. It's hard to say what is Janice and Ben and how much is just Janice. Like Ben might have set all this in motion to do his thing, but maybe he knew the necessary risk of working with Janice. Like maybe he knew it was a probability of her kind of going rogue, doing her own thing, or maybe it was all part of the plan. Like I'm going to do my thing, you get to do yours. Like we win-win. It's a win-win situation. And maybe, once again, maybe Ben accounted for it because of what he's doing. Who knows? Once again, we still don't know what the end result is going to be. Even Janice, we don't know what she wants necessarily. Because she actually ends up visiting her dad later on in the her mom. And I was like, huh, okay. It's like, well, you and your mom, because your mom gave you a heads up. Because she doesn't know, like, all that Janice is a part of. But then it's like, yeah, Mom, I want to talk about you. I thought Magic's the one that stopped me from being a part of the Quantum Leap project. It was like, no, you're the one. And she's like, right. The fact is, Sam was lost in time. Your dad was so focused on that project that I lost him to it. It's like, I didn't want you to waste your genius on this thing that just will never happen. But for her, it's like, did it never cross your mind I could be the one, that my genius could be pointed towards this, that I could be the one that solve it when no one else could? And it's like, right. So at least you're honest enough to admit, Mom, you didn't think so. And I was like, are you about to attack your mom or something? Are you about to drug? It's like, yeah. The moment she puts the cup down, I was like, oh, she drugged you, didn't she? I was like, that's jacked up. But she was like, yeah, I got to do whatever I got to do, because she ended up stealing her father, like not just her stepfather's files, but some of the stuff he kept related to all of this. So she's going super rogue, and they initially left everything that Janice was doing in Ziggy's programming, because it's like, right, to clear it, they would have had to reset it. She probably would have found another backdoor in, but that could have all, once again, been part of the plan of like, they knew like, and maybe once again, that could have been part of both of their plans of, if I go in there, they're not going to want to lose contact with me once they've had it. And because it will be like weeks maybe before they're able to like fully, like maybe a week or weeks to like fully get contact with me again. So they're not going to reset it. So they let her like, because it's like, right, she doesn't have any way of entering commands into Ziggy at the time that they were aware of. So it's like, right, we don't have to worry about it until we find out she got some of the stuff from her dad's, and that she has a tool that gives her, and because she already has access to put stuff in to Ziggy, she just needed her father's like command thing to do it, and lo and behold. And I don't know if that thing at the end, I don't know whether that's supposed to be like a model of like, either she's like making her own quantum leap thing there. Is she going to try going through time at the same time? Or is that just, I don't know what that was at the end that she was kind of staring at, because it looked kind of domish, like it could be like her own quantum leap machine, but maybe not. Maybe it has some other purpose. I only got like a quick look at it, so I didn't really fully know what I was looking at, but sets up a lot of really, really interesting things. I'm curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.